right, everybody. Thank you so much for participating in our webinar today. I'm super excited to have Austin here to talk to us all about staff retention and its importance and give us lots of tips and tricks and ways to retain our staff. So with that being said, Austin, why don't you take it away?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heather, for the quick intro, and then also all your effort that's gone into organizing this event. It's great to be working with Digitail and really, I think, pulling together unification across our industry. So really excited to dive in a little bit further. I'm personally like a huge agendas guy. So I set an agenda for almost every single meeting I do. So quickly, what we'll cover today is just a quick background on myself and the company Hound. And then we'll jump into our presentation that Sarah and I have pulled together. Should take, I'd say, 15 to 20 minutes to get through that. And then I'd say use the majority of the session to run through Q&A. So if there's any questions about, our product offering or, wanting to book additional demos, like on a one-to-one basis, that would be the place to do it. So without further ado, hello, everyone. I'm Austin Huff. I'm one of the co-founders and chief experience officer here at Hound, where we're building a veterinary future of work platform. And that means that we're helping people work how they want, love their work, and ultimately care for more pets. Let's see here. I don't have a traditional veterinary background. I actually kicked off my career in venture capital. Really enjoyed my time over there, but I've always had this big entrepreneurial bug. So wanted to see the operator side of the coin. So went to a company called care.com. And if you have little ones running around, I'm sure that you're familiar with this platform. But essentially, I helped them connect awesome caregivers, both nannies and, elder caregivers, to household employers, and then ensure that they had access to resources such as legal, tax, and payroll. So boring stuff for sure, but it was really valuable. But then, fast forward a couple years, I got a text message from an old college friend who happens to be our CEO, Andrew, who has an amazing veterinary background. And he was like, "Hey, Austin, do you want to come help launch this veterinary company in North America called Vetstoria?" Didn't bat an eye there. I said, "That sounds really awesome." And so we did that. It was wildly successful. We had a ton of fun. But I think fundamentally for me, what this really equipped me with is the ability to understand some of the challenges that a lot of these veterinary practices work through. And a lot of those challenges are really rooted in talent. So, we don't have enough talent to field all of our phone calls. We don't have enough talent to see our caseload. And, it's really hard to find the proper talents. It's hard to hire talent. And then it's even harder to retain talent. So without further ado, that kind of brings things full circle into what we're going to be talking about here today, in the role retention plays in your practice and its overall experience. So we'll talk all about how employee engagement can have a really significant impact on your business, and how retaining employees can really lead to a more productive workforce, a stronger sense of community and cohesion. And then ultimately, I think what all of us are really excited by is happier clients. So I think the proper thing to jump in on is the importance of engagement and kind of understanding that. So I probably don't need to tell you that an engaged workforce is a huge deal. You've probably heard all about it in LinkedIn or, one of the newsletters that you're subscribed to. And it makes sense, right? As veterinary professionals ourselves, like we understand how essential each one of our team members are. It'd be literally impossible to do our jobs without them, let alone create, a really, really awesome experience for our patients. So that's why for us, it's really important to keep our employees engaged and satisfied in their work, because not only is that going to drive productivity, increase the experience around quality of service, but it's also backed by quite a bit of data. So Harvard Business Review, I think it was a couple years back, they interviewed 800 employers, and of the respondents of the employers, 72% of them came back and had employee engagement pinned as their number one priority. Not their number two, not their number three, like literally 72% of them had this as their utmost importance for their company. And it makes sense, reading directly off the slide, like highly engaged employees score 81% higher in terms of customer satisfaction. Like that's amazing. But it's also something that's directly affecting, the performance of your business from a financial perspective too. So, an engaged team, they're contributing roughly 50% more in terms of revenue than a disengaged team. And that also bleeds into profitability as well. So it's also seen as they're helping generate 21% more in terms of profitability for your businesses as well. But with all that being said, I think the ultimate goal here is understanding retention. And so an engaged team is also much, much less likely to turn over, thus saving you quite a bit of money when it comes to needing to replace that talent. So to sum it all up, if there are, strategics and really strong initiatives in place at your practice, this could quickly become your secret sauce or your cheat code to building a really, really awesome experience. And while it's cool to highlight, I think the importance of engagement, I think it's also really helpful to understand the inverse, or what we call disengagement, and kind of the costs associated with that there. So employee disengagement is unfortunately a growing segment in the industry. I'm sure some of y'all experience some of this disengagement or turnover across the workforce. But when it comes to identifying these people, you don't really have to look hard. Unfortunately, these people are not super motivated in their roles or super passionate about what they're doing. They're also not super productive, so they don't feel that the work that they're doing is motivating them enough to want to do more. And yeah, you guessed it. These are the disengaged workers are the ones that are more likely to just up and quit in your workplace. And so no matter how you slice it, this is definitely something that's going to affect the bottom line performance of your business. And if we were to look at this, figure across all of VetMed, it's costing our industry about $2 billion every single year. So to us, it's crystal clear that there's really strong indications that there needs to be some changes made to combat disengagement and really drive engagement. And for us, I think the first step here is realizing how important engagement is. And for us to, fully understand the value of engagement, I think it's also really helpful to look back to psychology and science. So looking at Herzberg's two-factor principle, which is what you're kind of seeing outlined here, it essentially hypothesizes that employee satisfaction and engagement is influenced by two different sets of factors. You've got here shown in the green, you've got your motivator factors, and then shown in the yellow, you've got your hygiene factors, or what we call essentials here at Hound. So in the next couple of slides, we'll take a look at each of these, understand them a little bit more on a fundamental level, and how this might support you and your practice if you start to build a really rich foundation around that. So if we're looking at hygiene factors, these are things that if they're built well, they will help decrease, dissatisfaction, and then also support as kind of a bare minimum requirement for companies to prevent, again, dissatisfaction and actually retaining those employees. These are basics that I'd say employees look for when they're, shopping an employer or joining a new team. Yes, they want safe working conditions. Nobody wants to work when there's scaffolding hanging above their head and it's not properly built. It could clunk them in the head. That's not great. They want to have, healthy coworker relationships. So nipping toxicity in the workplace in the bud. And then of course, I think we can all agree that compensation, right? You want to, as an employee, if you're joining a team, you want to be fairly compensated for your output, your qualifications, and your overall experience. So I'd say look at this as a really, really strong foundation for, really building on engagement across the workforce. If this isn't executed well and you have a weak foundation, you're not going to be able to really drive engagement across your workforce, and let alone motivation across your team members. So when we look at this as a whole, I'd say really, really look to hygiene factors as your defense strategy when it comes to talent. Then the next one, of course, is motivator factors, which shown here are things that can help drive satisfaction within the workplace. These are things that companies should look to inspire their team members, empower them to, make some advancements in their career, and ultimately support them on a personal and professional growth path. So if the foundation here is built really well, once you have a really good foundation and hygiene factors, then you're really going to be well on your way to achieving organizational excellence and reaping all the rewards of, retention and engagement across the entire workplace. So I would say really look at these motivator factors as something that could really promote that healthy culture and act as almost like your offense strategy when it comes to talent. I always find it helpful, like, looking at a real world example, and here shortly you'll learn about some of our product offerings, but recognition is something that we believe in fully and are really passionate about. So imagine being an employee and you work for a company with a really strong recognition culture where they have clear and consistent practices to acknowledge their team members, celebrate wins. As that employee, you're going to feel inspired by your employer, you're going to feel recognized, and you're going to feel a sense of achievement, which is not only going to inspire you in your role, but also continue to drive that job satisfaction. So that wraps up just a quick understanding of Herzberg's two-factor principle. And then I also think, like, while covering that is super helpful in understanding like driving engagement, the value that you see from engagement is retention. And I think in order for you to fully understand the value of retention, it's helpful to shed some light on costs associated with turnover. And before we can really get into that, you're going to need to understand like how to calculate your turnover. So Sarah was able to, build an entire article that talks about improved retention in the workplace. And this was a really popular talking point. So if you wanted to run through a scenario, what you're going to want to do is gather about a year's worth of employment data, and then, start to work through this equation. So looking at total number of separations, both voluntary and involuntary. And then over the same time period, looking at the average number of employees that you've had in the practice or business, and then simply multiply it by 100 to land on that percentage. So that's going to be like a really helpful baseline to see kind of how you stack up against the benchmark, which the average turnover across all stakeholders in a practice is about 24% in the industry. Of course, some positions being much higher than that and some positions being a little bit lower than that. So it's always helpful too to really understand the costs associated with turnover, to do this departmentally as well. So understanding your turnover across your technicians or your DVMs or your front desk team and assistants and kennel techs and stuff like that, because then you can work backwards and understand what that's costing you. So we found in that ultimate guide to retention and understanding the costs associated to turnover is that employees earning less than $50,000 in your workplace, you can expect to pay about 20% of their earnings to replace them. So whether that's spending money on job ads, paying placement fees to third-party recruiters, and then also just getting them up to speed. So yeah, that's expensive. But then if you look at some of the positions that are directly correlated to revenue of your business, like a DVM, for instance, and they're making $100,000 a year, it's shown that they cost about 2 times their earnings to replace and get up to speed and get them at that output level that the person that left was at. So really helpful to just really understand a baseline, recognize areas for improvement and any trends along the way. So, next up, just kind of jumping into a recap as to where we're at this point in the presentation. Hopefully you can tell that employee engagement truly is critical to any business. And I think it's as simple as focusing on putting your people first can really help you drive engagement and, improve retention, but, also supporting things like fair wages for our profession. Notoriously, we are unfortunately underpaying some of our professionals. So offering better pay, creating and prioritizing healthier, more cohesive culture is really helpful. And then I think providing and having clear structure around opportunities for growth can really help take your business to the next step in order to combat disengagement and help reduce turnover. And then, of course, you're going to reap the rewards, as mentioned. You're going to have a workplace that not only attracts awesome talent, but is also well on its way to retaining and engaging that talent. which ultimately leads to a better experience for, your pet parents, your patient outcomes, and the whole gamut there. So I'm going to pause sharing my screen now before we jump into kind of the solution side of this presentation and how we can actually start helping you with improving retention and engagement. So what's really cool is we get to dive into a product that we call Rally. So Rally is a one-of-one solution built specifically for veterinary medicine to actually help improve retention, help increase job satisfaction, and then also drive employee engagement. So I think it's really cool as a company, like we get to build really cool software, but we're also in a unique position where we actually get to use this as a team ourselves. So we use this to capture all of our employee health scores, the engagement from our team members. We collect feedback from our team members to constantly improve culture and get ahead of any challenges that we might see from an employment standpoint. And what I think is really cool about the way that we've gone about building Rally is we really listened to the people of veterinary medicine. We did a really cool survey at one of these big conferences. I believe it was VMX a couple years back. And we had a ton of respondents come back, and we were essentially asking them, like, how do they feel about culture? And 11% of the respondents came back and felt that culture was good, leaving the other 89% feeling that culture was subpar or not great. So we've gone about launching Rally with a two-pronged approach. We've got the diagnostic side, which provides leadership, managers, owners of multiple practices, whatever it might be, with really rich workforce analytics to understand the health of their workforce. But in order to capture workforce analytics, you have to survey your team members. And so if we look at surveys standalone by themselves, like they're kind of clunky. People don't respond to them. There's actually an average of about a 10 to 30% response rate across surveys. And so as a result, you're just taking things away from your employee, and then they don't have any visibility about actually making those changes for the feedback that they've provided. So the one side is the diagnostics. The other prong is actually giving those team members and employees solutions that they want. So in digging into that survey, where 11% of people only felt that culture was good, the things that they felt were challenging in the workplace was like lack of recognition. They didn't feel appreciated. They didn't feel seen by their employers or their colleagues. They felt that communication was kind of dwindled, and they didn't have like a clear process to communicate with team members or have any social components. And then they felt that they couldn't provide actual honest, candid, or anonymous feedback to their employer. So what's really cool about our positioning here is we're building solutions that not only support employers, but also the team members, and gets them wanting to use this platform to promote a more cohesive culture, help people bond more closely, et cetera. So jumping in, just a couple of quick screenshots, and I'm going to preface this as well. Like, this is just a quick run through of some of the key features of the platform. We will be doing one-on-one demos to run through a more thorough one, so we can understand like your actual use case and how we might be able to support your business if this is something you're interested in. But from the top, we have employer dashboards. So this is going to feed you all the data that you need to understand the overall health of your team. No matter the size of your practice, if you're a single location or you're a practice with multiple locations, or you're a massive consolidator with, call it 110 different practices, you'll be able to drill into the data and understand the aggregate scores of employee satisfaction index, employee net promoter score, culture scores, and engagement scores, as well as those essentials and motivators, as we had earlier discussed from Herzberg's two-factor principle. You'll be able to aggregate that, or you could drill into a specific practice with multiple branches and then dig into those branches, or you could drill into one specific location and understand how they're doing as well. And then another really cool component here as a part of the dashboard is really getting ahead of attrition and turnover. So we do highlight struggling team members for you based on their engagement with the platform and their survey responses, et cetera. So you'll be able to say, okay, how is person 1 of 30 doing, for instance? You'll be able to know exactly how that person is doing on these core variables that we have here. Additionally, we have a recognition and rewards board, which is pretty awesome. So not only are we, helping people build a more cohesive culture by recognizing and celebrating wins, but we're also incentivizing them to do this and actually, have fun with it. So they'll be able to earn points, and then they'll be able to redeem those points for over 300 different gift cards. And then eventually we're going to be building things out here to have a custom merch store. So if you wanted to say, hey, like, I really like our practices branding and I want to, have some hoodies in there or some awesome socks, they could start actually redeeming those points for those gifts as well. So we got the recognition and rewards piece, which pulls them into the platform, continues getting them to use it, and then they'll also be able to complete their surveys through the use of the platform as well. Then we have growth and feedback. So not only the ability to set personal and professional goals and then provide leadership with visibility into that to encourage team members for achieving personal goals and motivate them to achieve those professional goals. But this also acts as a really, really awesome tool to capture feedback from team members. We call feedback magic wands. We like having fun spins on just about everything. But essentially people could come in here, provide that feedback to their employer, whether it's a new idea, a frustration that they might have with a coworker or colleague, or a request that they need to make for tools and tech. They can come in here, pick a category, select a tag, and then actually provide that feedback, which goes directly to management. Nobody else can see it. It's just the manager or the admins on the account. And then additionally, for employees where it's really, really valuable is the ability for them to provide anonymous feedback. So not only can they say like, yes, I want to deliver attributed feedback where my name is associated to it. Maybe I want to share something really, really critical of my employer that I absolutely hate. They have the ability to do that and then make that feedback anonymous. But there's more. So as an employer, you probably want to be able to reconcile that feedback and actually start making changes if it's relevant. So we actually have the ability for employers to respond to feedback, whether it is attributed or anonymous. So you could go in there, if somebody does anonymously submit some feedback, you'd be able to have a conversation with that person to work towards next steps in terms of resolving that issue. And then lastly, the light thing, community. We're a community-led company. I know that Digitail has an amazing community, so I'm sure that some of y'all value this. But the ability for people to come in and enjoy Rally just for fun, whether it's scheduling social outings like tacos and margaritas on Tuesday, or maybe we want to do some bowling, whatever it might be. This gives them a solution to be able to share those ideas and things that they want to plan with the team. But then it's also really helpful for management or leaders of multiple hospitals to communicate better. So imagine if you've got 100 practices that you're currently trying to communicate with, it might be kind of challenging starting a new thread, throwing everybody in blind copy and facilitating 100 different responses. You can come into Rally, select all the practices that you'd like to update, say, hey, we're no longer carrying this medication anymore. Please refrain from telling pet parents about it. And instantly you can communicate that across the entire portfolio of practices or just the one location. So ultimately helping you communicate more effectively and ensure that nothing slips through the cracks. So very, very high level overview of the platform. Can't say that enough. Really excited to dive into some more detailed one-to-one product tours. But just kind of discussing, the partnership that we have with Digitail and why this is really helpful for y'all. Is they've secured some really awesome discounts just based on our partnership with them. We see a ton of value in what they're doing and think that there's some really natural adjacencies for us. So our standard Rally pricing is $500 per location per month. And then with that Hound Digitail lifetime discount, it works you down to $275 per location per month. Sarah will drop some of the resources in here where you can go to the landing page and you can claim this discount. She'll also be dropping my demo link, so meeting with me directly. And then she'll also be sharing the ultimate guide for improved retention, which is kind of what this whole presentation was around. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now and open it up for any Q&A.
So thank you so much for taking us through Rally. I was personally very interested in it. I do come from a clinic background and can attest to the fact that employee engagement and retention and culture is something that is something that you need to work towards every single day, and it really needs to be prioritized. I can't say that enough, and it's really exciting that you've got this tool that you can use in order to keep people engaged and help people be fulfilled in their job.
100%. And, I think like there's so much information out there where it might be kind of hard to figure out like, okay, what's the first step to driving engagement and focusing on retention? And, unfortunately for VetMed as a whole, like there's not many solutions. Actually, there's not a single one aside from Rally that exists that's really, really focused on retention and employee engagement. So when you adopt these types of solutions, you don't have to worry about like, okay, what do I need to do? Like this platform does it for you. And it's what's called, it's a technical term, but it's anti-active usage. So it doesn't require like a ton of oversight from management to say like, hey, how do we go about adopting this solution? It pretty much does it itself because the employees are the ones that are, truly using it, truly getting and delivering the value out of the platform. So I'm glad that y'all all agree that it is a much needed solution in this space. Just I'm tired of seeing people hurt. I'm tired of, seeing this industry shrink in terms of, people in the industry because, pet demand is only growing. So we need to figure out ways that we can continue to keep our people engaged, give opportunities for growth. And, as Heather mentioned and put it perfectly, figure out ways to, inspire them and make sure that they're empowered in their roles.
Definitely. I think it's hard for management not knowing where to start, and this gives them a place. I'll reference the famous meme, at least in my circles, with the person drowning with the hand sticking out of the water, and then you get the person giving them a high five, and it's like pizza party.
Right, exactly. And what's crazy is if you look at it like for a practice, call it with 20 people, pizza party is going to be $300, and our solution's $275 a month, right?
Yeah.
For immense value where you're able to get ahead of attrition, which I think is like really, really important. So if you look at turnover prediction, you can now equip yourself as a proactive employer and say like, hey, this person's got 1 foot out the door. How can we get them back into the practice engaged versus them being too far gone? And then you're a reactive employer, you're scheduling a meeting with them because they're cursing at a coworker and they're throwing stuff around the office. Like that's not the environment that we want to have. And I really think that just by having a solution that can help get ahead of that, show the team members that aren't doing too hot, to where you can go out and say like, hey, like we noticed some things aren't going super well. Let's figure out how we can change that.
Rather having someone, quietly quit, as they say, you can see the opportunity for coaching and support, right? And really help to build them up to where you both need to be.
Yeah. And I know that we talked about the employer dashboards, but what's also really cool is as leaders in VetMed, on this platform, you have access to each individual's wellness profile. So not only do you have access to the greater organization and understanding the health of, your practice, but you can actually drill into those same, Herzberg's 2-factor principles, the essentials and the motivators of each individual person. So if you do recognize that somebody is struggling, you could go and look at those variables. Is it, supervisor quality? Is it compensation? Or is it advancement? They don't feel like, there's a clear path to the next step in their career. Is it something that they feel like, they want to be recognized more? So maybe it's okay, well, they want to be recognized more. I can use Hound's platform to recognize them for, doing something awesome, like placing their first ever IV catheter or whatever it might be. So there's really, really intelligent things in the platform that will allow you to be, again, proactive in that relationship that you have with your employees.
I like to one of the other things that you guys have addressed recently just in your blog, but the different ways to compensate your employees, right? When you're looking at what has value, not just to you, but to the employee and kind of catering to them. Being able to stay competitive. Obviously, there's some wage discrepancy in this industry, but you have to look at it from a mathematical point of view, obviously. And as an owner of the business, you have to make sure you stay competitive and relevant. So finding creative ways that are of higher value to your employees to compensate them is it's really imaginative, and I think something that people should get on top of, because it really does have the power to keep someone feeling invested and valued in their employment.
100%. I think Cody Creelman has the section in the blog where he talks about the unicorn clause. So it could be something as subtle as like we have a team member that doesn't drink coffee and we give a coffee allowance. So we're going to, in a clause in their employment contract, it says like when the team orders coffee, we order this person hot chocolate. It could be something as small and trivial as, call it $2 a month, that really helps shape that experience for that individual. And again, keeps them engaged, feels valued by their employer because they're doing something as subtle as that. But I'd also challenge everybody to do, some digging into, we have a pay repository. So if you're wondering about, what are people being paid and what do they feel is an appropriate wage? Sarah built out a amazing resource. I wanted to say a badass one, but an amazing resource where people are able to anonymously submit their pay, and you can see competitively like where you're standing at your practice versus what this individual is being paid and how they feel about their pay ranges and etc. So tons of really helpful resources that I think you can really dig up to understand what you could do to take the right steps towards fair compensation.
And don't forget that you are eligible for that lifetime discount on Rally. That's a huge, huge discount. You guys were so generous. Thank you so much, Huff, for giving that to our community. We really do appreciate it.
You just want to say thank y'all again, Digital, for having me on, and then everybody else that has attended. I appreciate the engagement and honestly the love that y'all showed for what we're building. And if there's anything else, as mentioned, the demo link is in the comments. Some of the links to the guides, the pay repository, and a ton of really helpful resources are there too. So don't hesitate to reach out. We're always excited to pick up on conversations and figure out how we can drive engagement at your practices.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Austin. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Absolutely. Y'all take care. Bye.
Thanks.